Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Thrive Like a Parent podcast. When I hit record, Stephanie, our guest, goes, "This is a blanket apology." And I looked at her, I was like, "Stephanie, like, this is the last place I need a blanket apology." I texted you last night and I was like, or I voice messaged you and I was like, cursing, and you could just be yourself, right? So like have at it.
The good news is I'm me anywhere I go.
Yes.
And you're getting the real me on camera because I literally just came in from a long run and here we are on a hot mic. So, just looking the
Are
part.
you in a closet?
And I'm in my closet. This is where I
There you go.
record all our podcasts and all this stuff that we do. So
There you go. Isn't that awesome? I've done this before where there's like multiple people are like, "Yep, I do it in my closet." Like great
yeah,
acoustics, like small
exactly.
area, it doesn't take up much space. You can have a little light there. Like it's perfect, right?
Yeah. And yes. And there are plenty of doors between me and any small humans that I live with and dogs. And
That's true. Mine is here but sleeping, thank goodness. Well, Stephanie, I want to introduce you and just kind of give a rundown of who you are. And then I'm going to give a very condensed version, but then I want you to give a very extended version. Stephanie and I met at a retreat summit. We are both involved in an incredible group of entrepreneurial business women, and I clicked with Steph like immediately and like just fell in love with you. Steph she's a president, I would say, of board of directors of an organization, nonprofit called For Those. She has a preemie or micro-preemie, we should say. And I'm sure she will tell you her story I don't have a micro-preemie, but I would say preemies is what we kind of bonded on. She has the ZEV Project, which is a podcast, Fox Dog Coffee, which is locally where she lives in Boulder.
yep, it's just outside of Boulder.
Also, an incredible short film called 147, which we will definitely get into. And I can't wait for everyone to get to know you. Steph, thank you so much for being here today. And honestly, hopefully this is like a catch up for you and I because I miss your face, but also for everyone to get to know you too, because you're a pretty kick-ass, awesome human.
Thanks. I mean, I think I'm really excited to invite everyone into like this relationship because when I met you, it felt like meeting fire, like in the coolest way. I echo exactly what you said. When we met, I was like, this is a person that like it was like soul to soul, felt like it understood something. Like it was just like a yes when you were there.
It was a yes for me.
Yeah, I think that there are just some people in life as you go that you meet, and you were one of those people. It was just like, gosh, it was just standing next to a flame, and I just loved that time with you, and I feel like it was like an instant knowing of one another, which I think, a lot of people say that, like they're like, oh, I met this person or whatever. Like I met you in that moment, and I was like, wow, I feel like the eternity.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
awesome. So I'm happy to be
Yeah.
here. I love knowing you and being known by you. And yeah, this is a good place to be.
I appreciate you saying that. That means so much to me because that weekend was fast and furious and there was so many wonderful women, but I would absolutely say I just felt like I knew no one when I walked in except for Amy Jo. I did know Lauren. We had like a meeting beforehand, but I felt the same. I was like, that person I want in my life, like that human, like that's a human I need in my hood, in my corner, like all up in there. So I appreciate and so honored that you felt the same. I would love for you to tell everyone a little bit about your story and how you kind of have come to the place you have gotten to within your life. And you are so much more than a micro-preemie mom, and I would say I'm speaking for you right now, which I don't need to do, but I wouldn't say that this is the defining thing that's like, this is your life. But at the same time, I think it is profoundly supported and affected your life in a beautiful, beautiful way. And I would love for you to kind of share all the things about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. And I want you to jump into because I know that there are a lot of things that vibrate or resonate in your story as well. And I think, I think that the ZEV story sort of integrates my whole life, which is really incredible. It's one of those narratives in life that happens and we've been able to make incredible meaning out of it. it. So I think I'll give that story first, and then it's going to be inevitable that everything else ties in. But
Yes, exactly.
so in 2019, I was 23 weeks pregnant with our third son, Ev. I had twins first. They were 2 at the time. And I was 23 weeks along. We had just gotten the keys to our coffee shop and like approval to start construction. And I went into the hospital with a mystery infection. The pregnancy had been really challenging up to that point. I had had a lot of heavy bleeding. Also, for everyone listening, like again, there's no sidestepping like the nitty gritty of our stories. So just get in with the details here. But I had had a lot of bleeding and stuff very early on, and we had thought we had miscarried. And every time we would look, Zev would be in there, and he would have a little heartbeat and be chugging along. And so at 23 weeks, I spiked a fever, and I couldn't. There was no way to get it down. I was getting into some dangerous territory as far as like I needed some fluids and stuff. And so I went into the emergency room, and they admitted me thinking it was all my blood work was super high and elevated. They thought it was an infection. Obviously, they knew it was, but they thought it was my appendix, and then they thought it was my kidneys, and then they thought it was my bladder, like all these different things. And Zev at the time looked good. He was snug as a bug there. 23 weeks is just halfway, just over halfway through pregnancy. And at the time, under viability.
Yeah.
Most hospitals, couldn't treat under 24 weeks. And so at 23 weeks, you're kind of just waiting to see what happens. And they were treating me for what they thought was a bladder infection. And then I just went into labor. And it was wild because it was kind of like everyone in the room sort of realized what was going on. And the infection was actually inside my uterus. Zev, the baby, was infected. I was infected. The only way for me to get the medicine I needed for curing that infection was to birth the baby. But at 23 weeks, they said, we can't sustain life at 23 weeks. And they said the option was to put Zev on my chest and let him pass peacefully. And it was an interesting moment because, I talk about this on the ZEV project. The ZEV project has our full story. We're going to talk about Tell Me What's Good and stuff, which is a phrase that we used during that time. But there's also this kind of other narrative, and this will lead into 4 of those later, but this sort of narrative that like 23 weekers typically have very severe health outcomes if they are lucky enough to survive. And there's a lot of narrative around the impossibility of this kid. If he does live, this is a life that is going to be incredibly painful for you, for him. Why, one of the doctors said, why would you want this for your son? Why would you want this for yourself? And I have a lot of compassion for that. I think in the moment, I was just kind of like, one of my friends was there. I had called her, I was alone in the hospital. Ben was at home with the twins, and I had called him, and I called our friend Tracy, and I just said, she came, and she was like, she had suffered a loss right around that gestational age. And she just looked at me and she was like, look, like, I want to just speak like life and love over you, over this baby. Like, if like I'm looking at this monitor, we're looking at the monitor and Zev's alive, he's in there. And I just thought like, all right, until that changes, I think this isn't about, it sort of became at this moment, it wasn't about like choosing life at any cost or anything. It was just about believing in life. Like if we can see where this can go, we can see beyond this moment, and I think we kind of hit this point where it was wild because there just happened to be a team from a local hospital down in Aurora, which is just past Denver. And they were like, look, if you can get her on a helicopter and she does not birth, like we have a chance, like we can try to resuscitate this baby. And so that's what we chose to do. We just said, hey, we're just going to see, we're going to choose the bigger life path here that just says, hey, let's see where this can go. We got to that hospital and the odds for Zev's survival we went from 0% survival to less than 1%.
Yeah.
It's not like we got there and they're like, he's going to live. Like they were like, look, a 23 weeker, like, I mean, they don't have lungs at this point. Like, this is a really, really small human. And, but we got there and they were just like, look, like all you have to choose right now is, do you want us to resuscitate this baby? He's likely not going to live through birth. But if he does, we can try. And so we just said, hey, let's just give it a shot. And Zev was born and he weighed 1 pound, 4 ounces, and he was small enough to fit into the palm of my hand. And that little baby with no lungs came out and he cried. And
Wildest
you
thing.
can see, no, you can see it we have it on video because it was such an impossible moment. And Zev cried and everyone in the room just freezes. Like it was like we had never heard something so powerful in our whole lives from such a tiny little thing. And they whisked him away to the NICU and so it began.
And so it began. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's an incredible story. I mean, to be able to hold your baby in the palm of your hand, I don't think anyone can truly fathom that. Like, I remember taking my rings off with both of my kiddos and like hooking them on their toes or things like that. Like, I mean, sure, your rings could probably have gone up all the way to Zev's thigh. Like, you know what I mean? This is the tiniest little soul, and out he comes screaming. Um, it was just the most incredible story, and the fact that you made it through the helicopter ride and all that I mean, it's just an incredible story. So tell everyone what happened next. How long were you in the NICU? What was that path and journey like through the NICU?
I mean, as anyone, like you and I have talked about this, like any time in the NICU is a really long time in the NICU.
Yeah.
Like there
And you
is
validated that for me, because I was like, well, we were in there for 3 weeks for both. And you were like, any amount of time is a long time. And I was like, well, thank you, because it feels like forever, even though my stint was not as long as yours.
the thing about it is like the other thing too is that everyone in the NICU has a different story. And so
Totally.
whatever your journey is, it can be, this is, I want to communicate that I'm very sensitive to the fact that we left with a baby in arms. And I'm very aware of that privilege, and not everyone has that road. And I think at the end of, we saw babies who were born later than Zev, healthier than Zev, not make it. And we sat with those families while we were all in there together. I remember one of the twins had like low blood sugar and like stayed in the NICU for like a night, and it was devastating, I
Totally.
mean, and here's Zev. I think, the other thing too that I want to say, I think it's important just to say we had the privilege of an impossible baby. So every day was Zev, though there was so much heartache and despair and fear and stuff sort of looming around us and his story. The reality is every day we got with him was lucky. Every day we got with him was not a guarantee. And so we were postured in a win from go. So with that, so in the first 2 weeks of Zev's life, I mean, he battled everything under the sun. So at the hospital where we were, their protocol was 24 weeks and up. So here comes a 23-weeker, and they're willing to try. And what is amazing is that because of Zev and the work that they've done there, they are now treating 22 and 23-weekers there. But Zev was a big mystery. He kind of came in and we all just wanted, they are so brilliant and they were just willing to say yes to how this went with reality. I mean, the other thing is like Zev had major lung collapses, trying to get food into a diet, into a system, getting any sort of nutrition in there was near impossible, right? He is dealing with infections. He has major brain bleeds, which wipe out whole swaths of his brain. And there's no way to know if it's going to affect him down the line or not. And what was so amazing, so I'll jump into tell me what's good because it comes in later. But, tell me what's good was something we would just say to the doctors. People would Zev was surrounded with bad news. All right. So there's just news, right? So like I can live in a world where news is neutral in some way. Like, Zev, we're just getting a lot of information. He's either going to make it or not. We could just hold that reality. But we would get this news like Zev has lost, X amount of his brain function with these bleeds or whatever. And I said, okay, well, tell me what's good, because it's like both a cry of lament. You're like in grief, right? You're crying out like, tell me what's good, anything. And then it's also this cry of victory of being like, look, I'm not going to sit here in like our other option is the pit of despair. So let's let's talk about something that's going to balance some of this. And the doctor was like, okay, well, he had these brain bleeds, but like with 23 weekers, he might not even have like his neurons formed yet. So like his neurons could form around these brain bleeds for all we know. Like
Mhm.
we don't know. And I was like, man, in the unknown, I'm like, that is where all the possibility lives for this kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, who knows? Well, it could be anything. And that's
Mhm.
what Tell Me What's Good did. It took what would be for Zev and turned it into what could be for
I
Zev.
love that.
And it didn't change anything about the outcomes. We couldn't control, what would happen from there on out, but it just balanced all that narrative with the whole picture, I think, the good and the hard. Yeah, and that's kind of like what his first 2 weeks were just so we had so much support. Ben and I, we couldn't stay at the hospital. We had the twins at home, and so we just were going back and forth as much as we could, and we had a lot of family and friends come and just support us in that time, and it was critical in those early weeks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. In all of the weeks, but I get it. It's
Yeah.
in the beginning, there's so much unknown, and then you kind of settle in, which you never want to settle into the NICU, but you're like, all right, we're here for a while. So, we're
Do you
gonna
remember
we're gonna
that
ride
transition?
this.
Do you remember that transition for yourself?
Yes. I think that the transition, to be quite honest with you, I think the transition happened for Eli, not Charlie. I think that I did not have that transition for Charlie at all. I think that I was so sad and so heartbroken and so fearful because I'm an occupational therapy or an occupational therapist, excuse me. And the hard part for me in all of it was I had never been around typically developing children as like exposure before I became a parent. My career was built on focusing on and supporting children with any type of diagnosis under the sun. I literally went in the NICU and I would work with kiddos in the NICU. And I saw kids who were preemies, or I saw kids, who were in traumatic car accidents with brain injuries. Like I saw it all. And so I knew, especially working in the NICU, I knew what was possible. I knew what was the potential outcome. And so there was just such fear of like, what will this be like, that I could never settle when Charlie was in the NICU. But being 3 years out from that experience and then going through it again, it was again very devastating. But I did get to Eli was strong enough. I think Charlie was a little bit weaker in terms of his lungs, but Eli was a little bit strong enough that, and I think he may have come out crying as well, that they rolled Eli by and they let me put Eli on my chest before he went to the NICU. And they were like, he's stable enough, but we never do this. And I was like, you just healed a wound inside of me that could never, ever, ever have been like healed besides this moment. And I think I just knew that Eli would be okay. I knew that Eli would come home eventually. And I guess I had that story in my head because of Charlie being born at 33 weeks. And so that's when Eli was born at 33 weeks. And so that was my story of they will be okay and they will come home. And that was when it was just like, giddy up, like we know what to expect and let's settle in because this is going to be a long road and you don't have a crystal ball and no one can tell you when that road will end or when your time in the NICU will be over. So we're just going to ride the wave. So I would say it was more of going through it twice rather than a longer stint, if you will.
Totally. I think too, what was interesting about our time there with Zev is that, once he was stable enough, which was probably about 6 weeks in. So we'll get to
Mhm.
his worst night and stuff and where four those came from. And I want to, we'll circle naturally back to this sort of healing piece from a season like that. But, one of the things that was really interesting is one of the nurses came to me and she said, once Zev was stable enough that we weren't literally sitting at home waiting for the call that he had died, you
Sure.
know, and that's like just the truth of having a micro-preemie is you're sort of constantly making impossible decisions about your child's health, welfare. You're also completely unable to do anything physical,
No,
you know.
you're in a bubble of a world and the rest of the world does not exist. It doesn't function. Like you are in the NICU, like cyclops of time. It's the most wild thing.
It is crazy. it was amazing. So there were two things that were really helpful at that time as we process this idea of sinking into our journey in the NICU. So with a 23-weeker, you're 4 months ahead of schedule. Zev ended up staying even longer than that. But it was interesting because you feel so helpless as a parent. You're sort of just sitting there and your baby's in an incubator. We could only touch him with one finger. We could put a little pressure on him. There was no like rubbing, like these natural pieces of parenthood where you're like, this will soothe the baby, would actually feel very violent to Zev.
Totally.
He had paper thin skin. He's a fetus. You're looking at a child. You're not supposed to see this child for 4 months, and so you're touching him, and that's all you can do. And it's for like 31 time a day, right? And that's what you're like clinging to as a parent. And what was so beautiful is that one of the nurses said to me, "You're the most important person in Zev's life. We are
Hmm.
here keeping him alive. We're putting in medicine. We're getting the ventilator, in and keeping it in. But you're the voice that he knows. So
Yeah.
he heard you in the womb. You are the voice in the world in this crazy, scary, violent, painful place. From everything we're doing to him
Yeah.
is painful. You're the only safe place for him that he knows. You're giving him permission to thrive. Like,
Yeah.
if there's a question in his little survival self, is this a safe place for me to live? Like, you are that safe place to him. You're giving him that allowance to say, yes, we are here. You are safe. And
Totally.
I thought that was such a gift of that time. I just want to, if any parents who have kids in the NICU are listening, like, it can feel you just feel so chained in what you can do, but
But
your
I think that
presence.
also it doesn't just like relate to a parent who is in the NICU. I think that that holds true for the rest of our children's lives, right? Like if your children are going through something or anything profound right now, like there's been bumps along the way in my children's lives, especially with Jonathan passing. And, that it was really, I would say, more difficult for Charlie because he was older, and like, you are still their voice of reason. You are still their calm space. You are still their human, right? And so
Mhm.
that is universal and beautiful information or just advice that we should take at every stage of parenthood, to be quite honest, you know?
Love that, Brooke. I think you're right. Like, this is what's cool. So as our story has grown, so beyond the NICU and into for those and running and all this stuff, it's like all those things, you're right. They come back and they echo to these other pieces. Like, one thing that I had to really think about as far as settling in is another gift that a nurse was talking to me about. Once Zev was stable enough to at least survive, they anticipated for extended periods of time versus hour by hour. She was like, this is when it gets hard. And I started
Mhm.
laughing. And she's like, in the first few weeks of Zev's life, you are pedal to the metal, highest highs, lowest lows, and it all happens within 30 minutes of each other. So you have a huge major, this like
True.
setback, and you're devastated, and your child is on death's door, and you are sitting here and you are willing this kid to let, you're like, come on, buddy, you are going to make it, and then all of a sudden they pull out of it, and then they're back. And then you get that for another hour, and then they're back into the red zone and whatever. But it's like, it's this emotional whiplash. But there was something in that part that gave us the energy to continue, like, fighting. Like, I mean, you talk, all of your work around nervous system regulation, like we were just like full on,
Yeah, yeah, you're there, and it's
we're
no
at
meditating could
150.
could get you down to where, right?
No. Well, it's required of you. I thought that was so fascinating about our bodies to like rise to that and to sustain that for so long. But like she was saying, like that heightened state fed us in those early weeks. And
Totally.
now, yes. And now
And it's
you have,
it really is why it's there. It's what needs to get you through because if not, you would probably be in freeze mode, you know?
totally. And I think a lot of people, like I felt very lucky to feel all those things in real time. Like I was very aware
Yes.
that we were like in crisis. Like this was not like I was like, this is fine. We can talk about partnership with Ben at that time too, but it's just like, those sort of high highs and low lows really carried us through. And she was like, this is when it gets hard because you're sort of now just, it's endurance at this
Yeah.
point. Now you're just like, you have a setback and it takes 4 days for it to resolve. And like, then you just really have to ride, like, it's not as choppy, but it's like long, rolling, hard stuff. And I was like,
Like
I
her
mean,
heart rate drops, and then it's adding another
ugh,
7 days to the it's just
it was
it's like,
so
okay, they're right, it is endurance.
it is. And that's why, like, honestly, like every NICU stay is different, but like it takes a lot for parents who are in the NICU for any amount of time because you're dealing with all those things at one time. Like you're in exactly what I say, you're like in this little bubble of intensity in all different ranges. Like it's crazy. But yeah, Zev, so, I'll sort of I'll get to his worst night. So 2 weeks into life, Zev, just suddenly crashed. He was doing okay, and, we got to the hospital, you could tell it was really bad. We had started to hear rumblings overnight when we would call in that he was tanking and, his lungs were just collapsing, and they just would not reopen, and they had moved him to every machine that was available to a NICU baby like that, and nothing was working, and no medications were working, and he was dying. And they brought us into the room and they said, we've come to the end of care for your son, and you have a choice to make. We can turn off his machines and let him pass peacefully in your arms, or we can try this one last Hail Mary, which is this medication. It's a steroid. It's a very mellow steroid, actually. It's called dexamethasone, very common, but with Zev's case history, with all of those brain bleeds that I talked about, with all of his extreme prematurity, if we gave him this drug, it had a 95% chance of just wiping out all of Zev's brain function. So we were looking at this impossible choice of, a lot like we could stop his suffering. Now he was starting to suffer because his organs were going to start slowly shutting down without oxygen, and or we could give him this medication. And we were looking at a very real possibility that Zev would have a very challenging and potentially very painful life. And it was incredible because as the doctor was leaving, I looked at her and I just said, "Can you tell me what's good?" And she turned around and we're all crying, which is like kind of the weird benefit of everyone being at the end. Like there was no way, you just couldn't bullshit your way out of this. Like
Yeah.
our son was like dying. Like we are sitting there preparing for this impossible choice. And again, we just asked, is there anything that you can share that would just inform the whole picture of Zev? And she said, your son is dying, but he's in there and he's fighting. And we truly hit this point in that moment where I thought, okay, like the thing about Tell Me What's Good, there are like these 5 things that always happened. And it happened in this moment too. It like, there's all this noise around what would be for Zev. He would never walk, never talk, never eat or breathe on his own. That's what they told us if we gave him this medicine. And we thought, okay, when you say Tell Me What's Good, it like pauses the chaos. That's a lot of information coming your way. And then you sort of can dig into your intuition. Once that's kind of quieted, we were able to hear that sort of inner, truer voice. How did we really feel about that? What did that really mean to us? I want to be really clear. There's no right or wrong decision for anyone listening. There's no right or wrong
Yeah.
decision here.
Yes.
Just a decision that we made. It could have gone 1,000 directions. There's no right answer. We have met families who have made all different types of choices. It's an impossible choice. I really, really believe that. We, there were a lot of opportunities for Zev to release. We gave him that dignity of death. We gave him the space without us like sitting there being like, live, 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 like I really do believe there is no right or wrong here. But for us, after that, you are hearing your intuition. And then we observed our agreements. Like, what did we agree about disability? What did we think about that? What was the narrative that the world was telling us? And what did we really feel in our hearts about our kids? And it was like, we were hearing all this narrative, like his life would be less, his life would be less. And honestly, in that moment, I was like, the fuck it will. I was like, we are going like this. That doesn't even cross my mind. Like there's only more for us, like on the other side of this. I don't know what it would look like. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but like, I'm not going to stand with that. I'm not going to stand with that idea that Zev's life will be less because he never, never, never. I think I really felt strongly in that way in that moment. And I just was like, and then the next step is you have to face your reality. The reality is Zev would likely never, never, never. And Zev would likely die. Like Zev would likely never even make it to morning. So like,
Yeah.
what are we going to choose here? And then ultimately, the last piece of Tell Me What's Good is that it always led us to surrender. And that night, it led us to the surrender of the whole of Zev's life. the whole of our lives, everything that came after, did we believe that a higher power, that love, whatever that looks like to you, would come through? That whether Zev lived or died or never, 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 that we would see the beauty and the goodness and the more in our story. And that night was the night that the seeds of for those were planted, because I know that we're not the only parents who have sat in that darkness, who have sat in that
Oh,
valley and thought, what is for me in this life? What is for our children in this life? What can be next if this is what we see today? And it was a moment where we decided to just surrender the outcome, to just say, if Zev lives long enough, let's try this medication and we will walk through whatever comes next, which we wouldn't know for years. Zev wouldn't go through development, in those motor skills or anything for many, many years. And so we decided to give him the dexamethasone and see what happened. And Zev pulled through. He did live through that night. He lived another, 4.5 months in the NICU. So we were there for 147 days. And each day we just saw Zev go through highs and lows, and we had major setbacks and leaps forward. And I think all that time we just carried with us this underlying sense of there's more to this story. Our story doesn't end in the NICU. It doesn't end with the outcomes of extreme prematurity. This is where our story starts. Impossible is where our story starts. So let's go from there.
Yeah. I think what is the most incredible piece and special about your story is that there is no right or wrong when it comes to big life choices like this. It is a decision that you as an individual with your spouse have to make. And I agree with you. There's no right or wrong in that. And even though you speak about tell me something good, I truly don't think it's as easy to surrender as when you speak about it sounds. And I think that you might not even realize the strength of your ability to surrender and how powerful that is, because surrendering to a questionable outcome, no matter what that is in life, is, yes, it brings you peace, but it also is, there's so many emotions and grief. I mean, there's just so much that comes with a surrender, and it is not an easy thing to do. But the fact that you all did it, you made the choice and you said, okay, now we just see what happens, and a host of possibilities from zero possibility, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really special, as well as tell me something good, because that is something that you can keep within you. And I know I took that with me from that weekend of just like reminding myself, like, I can always come back to that phrase. I can always come back to that phrase. And it does. It just reminds you in the thick of the storm or life or impossible circumstances or whatever someone's going through, of just, can we just have like a sliver of a something over there? You know what I mean? Like, can we just know that, like, the world's not ending. It's just life is real shitty right now. And we can have a sliver of a spark, or like
Yeah.
a little flame or a little candle, or, an Oreo or whatever, like a guilty little, gluttonous treat for you, whatever the hell that is. Right. But
Yes.
it's so special that you all found that for yourselves. And it's just wild.
I've always been someone that kind of like, I could tell that like my spirit was like, when people would say like Zev's life will be less, I was like, wrong. Like your life will be less. And I could just feel it in my bones, just being like, no, I just don't stand with that. But I want to be really clear. I think a lot of people here tell me what's good, and they're like, oh, this is like lemons to lemonade. That I didn't engage with grief, that like, I want to be really clear. This is not like covering
No,
over the toxic positivity. It holds
no.
hands. It
Yeah.
holds hands with grief, glory and grief in the NICU, everything in the NICU. And I think actually in really hard, challenging seasons like that, it's like all the things exist at the same time. And that means that, you are finding hope in very hopeless times, but hope isn't tied. Hope wasn't tied to an outcome for us. Hope
Yeah.
was not, I hope Zev walks. I hope Zev, can talk someday. I hope Zev's not blind, which we got that news, that he would be fully blind. We, all these things, like it wasn't tied to what came next. It wasn't like, I hope this happens for Zev. Hope through Tell Me What's Good became a posture that just said, I expect that love will come through whatever comes next. It was just a posture of expectation that I don't know how this is going to go. And we work with a lot of families now where we don't know how their story is going to go. I don't
Yes.
know. It actually could get way worse before you sense any good here. We're not here just be like, well, look at the positive. A lot of the times there's no positive to look at. For us, it was a battle cry against the literal, what we felt were like the spirit of death in the room. Like, I'm like, look, I, again, like I said, it's like our other option was falling into the pit of despair and never coming out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna choose to just believe that whatever the fuck happens, like, we're gonna make it.
It was
And
yeah.
now yeah, like, I think it's so easy to just be like, "Oh, well, you're naturally positive." I think I have a big resistance to like someone claiming a future for us and for our son that
Yeah.
control. Your son will never do this, and that means this. And I'm like, we can't predict the future for Zev. And I don't even mean his physical outcomes. I mean just like
Just
what
in
the
general.
his life would be or what it would mean or I don't know. I just think like it was not against doctors or other people. It was just about those inner voices, those things that like when you're in the valley, it can like those inner voices. For me, it meant finding a higher voice. Those inner voices could lie a little bit to me. And we'll talk about that in running. But like for me, it was finding that higher voice that's of love, of again, whatever out there you're thinking is that higher voice in you, in self. It's like it just brought it to a place that just said, I can hold both things. I can hold the grief and the goodness in the same hand, and we're going to walk forward like that. Yeah.
So tell everyone how Zev is doing now.
So here's the miracle kid. So this little child, after 5 months in the NICU, comes home. Zev has virtually no outcomes from his extreme prematurity. He does have an inhaler and he has glasses. We were able to save his vision, but that kid is out here. He's in kindergarten now. He's finishing up. He is just like rocking through life. He is like a little fireball. And he is just an incredible little human that reminds me every day. And I've said it already, but like impossible is where our stories start. Like this kid is crushing it. And I feel so lucky to have surrendered him over. Like it taught me
Yeah.
so much about Zev, just and being a mother and a partner and a parent to say, there's just a bigger story here. And I'm just so lucky to both participate in it and witness it. Zev's thriving. And he loves, I mean, all the four of those stuff he comes to and meets all the other kiddos. And it's just an amazing existence that we have.
And so, For Those is a nonprofit where you are building the impossible for parents of preemies and families, and you are wanting to be able to say the impossible is actually possible. Like, they don't need to have barriers. And this can be done just in a way that suits each of your families. And it's an incredible organization that you have taken time to build, and you and your family, and give back and remain in the NICU community.
Yeah. Yeah. Four of those is special. Ben and I we kind of got out of there and we were like, gosh, what do we need? Like,
Yeah.
we need this, like what we were fighting for lived out loud. Like we need a place to heal. We need a place to believe in this possibility that we were fighting so hard for. We need a place to hope. What does that look like for our families? And when I say like the seeds of this were planted, on the Zev's worst night, the reality is like, we wanted to create a place that just changes the narrative around extreme prematurity. The narrative that we found was so often, again, a narrative of less for them, for our kids, for our lives as parents and a thriving family. We heard a lot of you'll never, you'll never, you'll never. And some of that may be true. I don't know. I think I don't want to discount the real experiences of people who come out of the NICU after these long stays. But for us, I just said, okay, can we build a place for all these kids and families to come that is accessible, that's adaptive, where these kids can come and be kids. So every year we put on this NICU Family Day Out for all the kids and families in our area, where they come, and it's like a mini carnival. Basically, there's like a ride on train, petting zoo, face painting, like all these things that you just thought would never be for you when you're looking at this kid thinking, they're going to never, never,
Yeah.
never.
Are we gonna
And
get out of here? Yeah.
yes, what is life going to look like? We have people show up and they're like, we're going to take all the photos, like they do like family
Yeah.
photos because they just like never thought that they would see their kid like pet a pony. Like these are these simple little things. Every time we saw Zev do anything, I mean, it is remarkable to watch a child learn to crawl or walk 100% under the best circumstances. Watching Zev do it, it healed something in me that I didn't even know was broken. I was like, seeing that happen, we wanted these simple places, the simple access for these families, whether their kid, all the never, never, nevers. Okay, well, we're building a place now where you can come no matter what comes from your
Yeah.
extreme. And so we're looking at a property right now where we're actually going to build this in real life where it's fully accessible, fully adapted for all these kids coming out so that their families can come together. The other thing is, the NICU separates you. I don't know if you felt this way too. You're in 1,000 places. Your heart is in multiple places at once. Physically,
Totally.
yes, you're like in
Totally.
different places. Well,
And if you have kids at home while another one is in the NICU, it's your heart is
bingo,
ripped out of your chest. It's like you don't know where to be, you don't know who to it's not
bingo.
fun.
Yeah, and for a lot of our siblings, they have a sibling, who's very medically complex, and there are lots of sort of things around that. Can you go to birthday parties? So we do it outside. We have big indoor spaces if you want to be inside, but it creates this environment where the siblings too, where families can just come and be together. I think that is something that was like really healing for our family too. The times and places where we were all together as a whole. And I think like that healed something. So that's like our like the super fun, crazy, awesome part of for those. And the other side is caring for our parents and caregivers. And that is through our parent care workshop and we have caregivers of all kinds, lots of different types of caregivers in the NICU for our micro-preemie families who come, and we have a licensed family and trauma therapist, and we work on them finding and believing in life for themselves after this journey of extreme prematurity, because so much is around the care and the survival of your child. And I think oftentimes you can get so laser focused on that you wonder what's for you too. And we're saying like your future is big. Your future is full of possibility. There's more in your story too. And it's an incredible place to share the journey. We're expanding it this year to help couples or people who are co-parenting now after the NICU journey. And so that's been an incredible space too. It's very sacred. It's like, I know you know this because you're a NICU parent. There's just like a sacred place of like, wow, I'm going to lay down my burden for just
Yeah.
a morning. It just
Yeah.
heals you in a new way. So that's
I'm gonna
awesome.
give I'm gonna give you one story, and I think you and I spoke about it while we were together. And then I want you to tell everyone about the documentary because it's pretty incredible. But in order to give anyone listening an idea into what it's like for someone to care for a child who has been in the NICU, Carter actually has a brother who I have posted in my stories before. He has cerebral palsy from prematurity. And he was a 24 weeker, but he's 35 years old. So he was a 24 weeker, right? Like a bazillion years ago. Well, 35, years ago. And we went to the beach last summer and he came. We could not, in this neighborhood that we had already rented a house, we could not find any accessible houses for Carter's mom and dad and brother to stay in. We finally found a hotel that was accessible and had some accessible rooms. And sometimes, even when they come here to Austin, they have to stay far away because all the accessible rooms are booked. I was able to find a beach wheelchair, which is like these blow up wheels. And we got Daniel down to the beach and we got him in the ocean and he had a blast. There was also a water chair at the community pool in this neighborhood. We were able to get him in the lazy river. Like we were able to do all these things, but it wasn't without effort. And I'm saying all of those little mini wins of like, we got him the beach, we got him in the water, we got him on the lazy river, because those are challenging things. Those take effort for the families. And to be able to have a place where you can know that it is 100% accessible, you can go enjoy yourself, have some even respite care for yourself, but get to see your child do things like you said, touch a horse that you never thought they would get to do. Even Carter said, like, He's maybe seen his brother in the ocean 2 or 3 times, things that we may take for granted within our life that we may, everyone may go on an annual, I don't know, beach trip. You may not, but it's just things that we don't recognize. Can we go to this restaurant because are there stairs up the restaurant? And is there a doorway big enough, or is there a table end big enough? And it's constantly, the world does not function around supporting any individual with any type of different need as just an everyday idea or thought. It just doesn't happen for most humans. That's not anyone's fault. But if you're not in the world of healthcare, if you're not in the world of or having experience with someone like this or any individual within your life, you don't know that this is I'm going to say it, like an extremely challenging and difficult and hard life. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's exhausting, it's all of the things. And so to be able to have that is such a gift for all the families who have been through that.
Brooke, you're speaking to the heart of it. When we were in that NICU, we just thought we don't want anyone wondering what could be for their kids.
Yes.
We want the world to see for those and say, we could make the world like that. That takes this, it's one of those things where one of the big, we have this, when we get the property, our huge big event is going to be called For Those All Seasons. And we're going to, a big beach day, and we're going to have
I love that.
we're going to make a beach where we are. We're going to make all these different things and make them accessible so that people can come and visit who aren't NICU families, who don't have kiddos who have medical complexities or all these different types of abilities, can come and say, wow, this is what we could make our world. This is what it is about. This is what being alive is. It's all parts of this. And I think it was one of the, we really sat there. I was just like when everyone's like, ZEV and this and that about his life. And I was like, dude, whatever. Like, we're going to make that life. And now we're going to make it for everyone. I'm like, we're going to make that for ZEV. We're going to make it for us. And now we're going to make it for every single person out there who needs it. I really do believe that. And we have architects and people who are lined up to help us build this place. And it's really, really incredible that we know when the time comes, it's going to be the place that people can look at and say, this is how it could be. That is so critical.
I agree.
Amazing. It's amazing. Gosh,
so tell everyone about your venture of this documentary and your running journey, I would say.
The running journey that never stops. Okay. So when For Those started, I started thinking, okay, well, what can I do to help raise money and awareness for what we're doing? We were just a budding little nonprofit. And I thought, okay, I didn't run or anything when I became a parent. I had done Ironmans and stuff before in my 20s, but I used to run, and actually, Brooke, I feel like you would appreciate this. Like, I used to run, I said this on stage once, to escape the big hard things. And now I run to remember every single part of them, to embody and integrate.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Like my first Ironman, I had never done a running race. I didn't own a bike or anything. And I was like out heartbroken, like drunk at a bar with like a cigarette in my hand. And I was like, I need to heal. Like, I'm going to do an Ironman. Like, I didn't even own a bike. I'd never done a lap in a pool. And I signed up, and 9 months later I completed the thing. And then it was like, but I was trying to heal. I was trying to find this way to escape that ache, that grief. And then it was like life happened. I grew, I healed, I got into 12-step. I started all these different journeys that really brought me back to a place of health and surrender to my life. And it was cool because the ZEV story, totally reoriented me to grief. I mean, it stripped me from all the sort of protective mechanisms I had put up.
Yeah.
And it invited me to really see everything for what it really was in my life, for the greatest pieces and the hardest pieces. And when I was thinking about running, again, I got into the New York Marathon late. I was actually at a Renegade Summit when I got the news, and I had 7 weeks to train. I went from 0 to a marathon, but I was like, I'm not going to miss the New York Marathon. So I ran it with my best friend. And then after that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can run. I feel like a different runner now. I'm running for different reasons and in a new way. And I was like, I bet I could run 147 miles, one for every day that Zev was in the NICU. I bet I could do 147 miles in a row to bring hope, healing, and possibility to other people. And so I like put it out on Instagram, and I was like planning to do it all on my own. Like Ben was going to crew. I was just going to do it and just see if we can make a little, my goal was $5,000, was to make $5,000. That was half our annual budget at that point. You know, we were small potatoes.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're going to try to raise $5,000. I'm going to run 147 miles. And by the time that run came around, we had hundreds of people there. They were running with me. We raised over $50,000 just for that effort. It was an incredible experience. People came. Amy Jo came and ran with me. You know, I met Amy Jo in the NICU. So that was a really special thing. Zev's OT, PT ran with me. You know, it was just our whole community that was there for the Zev season and beyond came together, ran with me, paced me. Everything went sideways, as life always does. You know, it was a perfect blend of like what we experienced in the NICU embodied. I found in that season, like I healed. I cried for the first time I had cried over Zev maybe a handful of times in the NICU, but more out of like desperation
Sure.
for hope, you know. But
Yeah.
I really, I had to embody, my physical body was able to finally express all that ache, and that's encouragement to anyone going through a hard season or feeling like you're still in that dark valley. Like
Yeah.
it took me 4 years and running 150 miles in a row to really feel this experience. And
Totally.
it brought me to a new place, and this run, so our friends, we had asked them to come shoot for like an Instagram reel, and they ended up staying the whole time, and they collected footage from our community, and they made a documentary. We together made it, and we submitted it to film festivals, and it's won awards. And we're, you know, you can check it all out on the website at forthose.org. But it's just like 147 has allowed us access to tell our story in a new way. It has given an invitation to people to come and find their own stories in our story, to
Yes.
experience their journey with us. And then, you know, I ran a streak after that. I did 14.7 miles for the 147 days that Zev was in the NICU every day. And then now I'm training to run.
But you keep laughing at yourself of like, you're like shocked that you're doing these things. It's
I know.
amazing.
I'm the perfect blend of like absolutely terrified and overly confident. Like it is like, I feel like it's going to happen one way or another. And I'm excited to see how. But it's like, you know, I'm going to run 1,470 miles around the state of Colorado to bring our story of hope, healing, and possibility to other NICUs around the state. So that's going to be in the summer of 2026. So we're scouting this year. I'll do the 147 solo attempt, just to like do it again. And then next year we'll take off and we'll take 4 of those all over the state. Yeah, that's all the running. It's just the perfect invitation to me to say, hey, can we help share the experience that we had a little bit, the highs, the lows, and everything in between? You know?
I was just looking, I just did a quick Google to type it in to see where you can watch the film, and I would love it. We'll get the link so we can post it on this episode underneath, but let's just like paint the picture. Okay. So first I meet you and I fall in love with you. Then we have this like awesome experience with all these women over the course of like 48 hours. And at the end of this weekend, Steph is like, yeah, I've got it with me. Like if you guys want to watch it. And I was like, well, we're watching this. Like we're going to figure this out. Like, I don't know if Amy Jo has that on the agenda, but like this shit's happening. Like I need to see this thing. Granted, you woke up the morning that we were all together and then you went on a run. Like you're still running. When Steph just got on with me, I go, so how many miles are you doing a day? And she goes, oh, just about like 40 a week. I'm like, oh, okay. Like no big deal. Okay. But anyway, that's where Steph is at still today. And we all go upstairs to this like loft area. I sit next to Lauren, who is, I don't know, 6 months pregnant. And I think I was sitting next to Amy Jo on the other side of me. And like, I already feel connected to you. Amy Jo and I are both in the NICU. We've both been in the NICU before. Lauren's over here pregnant. And when I tell you, I was like hysterical. And Lauren and I looked at each other. We were like literally boo-hooing through this documentary of 20 minutes. And we were like, what is wrong with us? Like we could not stop. Before, during, after, like it is the most incredible documentary. And it's only 20 minutes long, but it tells the most incredible story. And part of the cool aspect of this documentary is you didn't even do this to make a documentary. You didn't even do this to win awards. You didn't even like hire a crew to like potentially put something together. It just happened. But it is incredible to tell ZEV's story through watching you run through like random fields of nothing, and all of a sudden you're up a hill, and then you maybe rested for like 30 minutes or an hour and your feet are raw, but you keep going, and at the end like you push through. It was just it kind of tells a story side by side of like ZEV's own fight, right? Like the way that he just, and they said, tell me something good, right? And they were like, he is fighting. Like you push through those 147 miles in one stint with very, very, very few breaks. And it's the most incredible to what you've been through and healing journey. And it's just absolutely incredible. And if or when you do that again, I've already decided I'm coming. And I'm invited, whether you invite me or not. It was already on my calendar. Like as I was watching the documentary, I was like, oh, I'm going. Like I'm going if she does this again. I'm gonna be there, and like she doesn't even know it yet, but like I'm gonna get to watch this in person because it was just so profound. I urge everyone to watch it. Again, it's 20 minutes, but it's a beautiful, beautiful 20 minutes, and it's just such a reminder of all things can actually be good, and we can make, and it's not always making lemons or lemonade out of lemons, but that we can always find something if necessary to look towards, or we all have our own healing journey, or like it can be a million different things.
Yeah, I think it's just, the documentary is such a wonderful way to sort of share just a piece of our story that invites people to look deeper into it and into their own lives, and to tell me what's good for themselves, and say, I think for us, it was like I can stand in that valley. I will go through the suffering just to see what's on the other side of it. Like,
Yes.
I think that there is this part of me that wants to invite people into that rise, into that feeling of saying like, I don't know what's ahead for you. What I do want to say is that what we learned, I don't have advice, but I can share our experience. And what we learned is that the unknown future ahead, like there was so much more that it gave. It threatened to steal, but in the end, it gave so much more to us. And it can to you too. In those unknowns, that's where the possibility lives. And your story just is never over. I really believe
it's never
that.
over. And I'm going to share something with you in a way that your story has affected me, and the similarities, or just how I can connect with your story based on something completely different happening, right? I had to surrender to Jonathan's mental health of I can't keep doing this fight for you. I need you to be responsible for your own journey in life. And that surrender, like when I brought that up earlier, I know that surrender. It's the hardest surrender I've ever had to do in my life, but it's one that I had to do for my own mental health, right? And despite the road leading to where it has, and me moving through grief and all of those things, there is so much that, like you just said, I have learned and I have grown. And it's hard to be like, would I do it all over again? Yes. That's hard to say because another human is not here. But I will tell you that I would not be the human that I am today if I didn't have that experience. And I would not be the human that I am today if I hadn't been able to move through and heal. And for you, it was running. I love how you explain, you used to run to like avoid, and now you run to like almost run, like instead of running away from, you're running towards. You are like running towards the emotions. You're running towards the feelings. You're running towards the hard, to move through it, to process it, to get to the other side. And I would say in the thick of trying to get to that surrender place with Jonathan, I utilized walking, and my knees aren't good with running. By the way, I've tried that and they crap out. So I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked. And I would say that that is the number one first thing I did that helped start my journey of like supporting myself through regulation and supporting myself through having my own journey of life and what that journey looks like for me. And I just wanted to share that with you because even though your story is about the NICU, it translates into so much more. And there are so many things that individuals have gone through that this story you can find similarities in, and you can find pieces and say, I understand that universal feeling of surrender, or I understand that universal feeling of grief, and I really truly do believe that the one thing that binds all of us within this life, and none of us truly realize it, but the one thing that binds every single one of us in this life as a humanity is emotions and feelings, because we know what certain emotions feel like. We know what hatred feels like, or anger feels like, or sadness feels like, or happiness or calmness. Like our brains and bodies know that. And universally, that is the one thing that we can all share. Through the experiences, we have different ones. But the fact that we all know and can understand, like grief, yep, I get it. Like I hear you. Like that's a hard one. Like I can connect with you because you understand that emotion, that feeling, right? And so there's just so much in your story that is so beautiful and so powerful. And so I really thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared today and telling everyone your story. I couldn't even talk about my kids' NICU journey for probably a year or two without crying, like no joke. And you can talk about it over and over and over, and you're solid as a rock. Not to say you don't have emotions, but the way that you express it is just so beautiful and so needed for so many people. So thank you for sharing it today.
Thanks, Brooke. Thanks for having me. It's so good to be
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah. Tell everyone where they can find you and where they can watch the film. I will also tag and post all this underneath our podcast, all the information below, but just tell
Awesome.
everyone where they can find your awesome self.
All right. So you can find all the info about For Those and stuff at forthose.org. That's the number 4, THOSE.org. You can sign up for a newsletter there to get all the updates on stuff, or just email us or whatever. It is me on the other end of the line. So you can just say hello. I love to hear from people. You can follow all of the day-to-day journeys on Instagram right now at forthose.org, the number 4, THOSEORG. I'm posting in stories every day about the run journey. You can connect with us. You can see all the big highlights there. We also have a YouTube channel for those. And actually, for the documentary, we are going to release it publicly. We're going to post it on our YouTube channel soon. But if you would like to see it, just shoot me an email, or you can get a hold of Farsighted Creative. That's the people who made the film, our filmmakers, all linked on the website. Or you can just email me and ask for it, and I'll send you the link, and you're welcome to share it with anyone you'd like to share it. We will be posting it probably when I run the 147 solo onto our YouTube page, where everyone can just click and access. But it's free for everyone. That was really important to us to make it available now that it's been through all the festival runs. We want as many people to see it, anyone who needs it. Our biggest ask as a nonprofit is that, if you know someone who needs the hope, healing, and possibility that we offer. And again, Brooke, you're right. Like, this is for everyone. Like, I want For Those to be a place where the answer is yes. This is hard. Yes. This is beautiful. Yes. This is devastating. Yes. This is miraculous. Yes. It's all yes. And I think what we just want to keep reminding people is that, people you could hear our whole story on the ZEV Project podcast, wherever you find podcasts. That's another great way to just sort of get all the background there. But it's like someone, we had people in the NICU who are like, I didn't believe in a future for myself or our kids until I heard your story. And I'm like, yes, get in here. Get in on the
Yeah.
future that is ahead of you. It is big and it is unknown, but it can be good. And
It can be.
yeah, it can be, even, no matter what is happening today. And, we can hold that. We can hold it. So you
Yeah.
can find us, just find For Those and you'll find us. And gosh, we're just happy everyone's here. Honestly, just get in here.
I love that. Well, thank you for being here. Everyone, go watch that film and take a look at their YouTube page and follow Steph's running journey because it's pretty awesome. And until next time, XOXO, Dr. B.